outlets being very vulnerable, walking around with very little protection at all, and that was why the police were wanting to move some of these journalists out of the area.
And he also defended the use of some of these military-style equipment that's being used, and saying that, look, we used a SWAT truck to get into a location through protesters where there was a shooting victim. So noting there that they needed that to get help to those who needed it. Our Steve Kastenbaum has been there in Ferguson watching all of this over the past few days and joins us now. Steve, what stood out to you from Captain Johnson's comments there, either what he said or emotionally what came across?
This was the most emotional we've seen him at one of these late-night, early-morning press conferences, defending the actions of police, saying that this community essentially needs to be made whole again. And he is feeling the emotions that the people who live in Ferguson are feeling, because he hears from them every day. And he's talking about a small number of people, criminals, as he called them, that are essentially ruining it for all the other people here who want to exercise their right to peacefully protest. This evening, when we first came out here, it was a dramatically different scene in Ferguson. It was very calm, very subdued, no cars racing up and down the avenue. People were marching. They were loud, but they were peacefully marching. But as he said, toward the later half of the evening, it got different. It changed. There were some people within the line of marchers that became confrontational with police. Local community activists and leaders were trying to calm people down, but there were some people within the crowd who would just not listen to them. They were intent, and we saw this, we broadcast it live. They were intent on confronting police tonight, and Captain Johnson clearly talking about those individuals.
And Steve, we were showing live pictures a little earlier of those people taken into custody. They were under arrest, and we heard from Captain Ron Johnson there that 31 people were arrested, and interestingly that a number of them came from New York and California.
Yeah, there are definitely some folks here in the crowd who you see the clothing that they wear, the messages on their T-shirts, and some of them even have the names of organizations on their T-shirts that we've recognized from other demonstrations around the country. So, yeah, there are some people who have come here because this is what they do, and there is an example of what they consider to be police infringing on the rights of everyday citizens. They come to flashpoints like this to get their messages across. It's something we've seen in the past. But today it really took a turn for the worse when some of those bad actors, as he calls them, the criminals, decided that they were not going to listen to police no matter what community leaders were telling them to do. And myself, along with Ed Lavandera and several of our CNN staffers, were at one of those flashpoints. We were at that location where shots were fired, and we were there where one of these civilians was shot and injured. And it was an extremely tense and chaotic situation. You're seeing the video now. There were people in the crowd who would not obey the order to clear the street. There was an individual that we saw. We have footage of trying to set a building on fire. That individual, his actions really elevated the level of response. It prompted police to really rush in there, and that's when myself and CNN photojournalist Ken Tillis heard those shots fired, and we took cover along with all the other journalists and some of the protesters who were there as well. The police took cover at that point. We heard very clearly shots coming from the side streets where protesters had scattered when the police had used flash grenades, smoke grenades, and tear gas to sort of disperse the crowd. And again, we did see what appeared to be flames licking the side of a building as a protester tried to set, apparently, it appeared on our video, appeared to try to set a building on fire here tonight.
And Steve, one thing Ron Johnson said there is not a single shot, not a single bullet, right, was fired by police. We know that schools are closed throughout the week. And Captain Johnson also encouraging people to demonstrate during the daytime to avoid what he described as a dangerous dynamic in the night. How active are the protests during the day? Are people likely to take his advice and show out maybe larger during the day and wrap it up by the evening?
It's hard to say where it'll go from here. I know we spoke to some local residents in Ferguson who live right along the main drag in the town where this nightly demonstration has been taking place, and they say they want their neighborhood back, and they were very unhappy with the way, especially their businesses, were being treated, the way they felt that their neighborhood was being disrespected by these outside individuals who have come in and on several nights looted their community. They told us, right to our faces, that they were not happy with the cars that were parading up and down the street and spinning their wheels while young people were standing on top of the cars and they were blasting music. They said to them that's not the way to protest here. To them, they felt their neighborhood was being disrespected by some of these outside individuals who were coming in to partake in these protests at night. So I think that what we have seen in the past is that the crowds don't really build in number until early evening, and then once the sun goes down, you had been getting a different element in here. During the late afternoon, early evening, it was much more peaceful. You would see families out there, but at night you would hear much more music blasting. You would see people consuming alcohol, smoking marijuana on the side streets. There is that element here as well, and I think the people that we spoke to who live in the community very close to where these demonstrations have been taking place, they quite frankly tonight told us they were tired of that.
And so is Captain Johnson. He's saying this is all about safety. Safety is their top concern. He doesn't believe peaceful protesters are the ones antagonizing. He describes them as criminals. It will be interesting to see the mood of Ferguson, Missouri Tuesday as the sun comes up and what's been another very contentious night. That's our Steve Kastenbaum live for us in Ferguson, Missouri. Thanks very much. Coming up here next.